And this chapter is about business continuity. And I got a couple examples I'm going to give you throughout the lecture tonight. All right, what is it? It says the organization's ability to maintain operations after a disruptive event. So Rose State a few years ago had a tornado. It took out part of the communication center, but we still continued to function. Has anyone ever been in a tornado? No. I lived on Tinker when the tornado went right down Sooner Road, and it was swirling in my backyard. It was pretty amazing. But the point is, you have to be able to continue to function. Can you imagine if something happening at Rose State and we didn't have the ability to continue to function? Like right now, that would kind of suck. We'd be out, we have what, 2 weeks left, 3 weeks left? Wouldn't be good. So involves continuity planning, impact analysis, and recovery planning. We're going to talk about all three of those. Okay, continuity planning says identify your exposure to threats. Are there any threats out there? Yes, right now we have weather. That's a very large threat. How about electrical? We seem to have decent electrical here, but has anyone got a generator at home? Anybody? Anybody online have a generator at their house?
No.
No. Oh, you need to get one. They're amazing. What did you say, Freddie?
Yeah, we used to have one.
I used to run an ISP out of my house, so I got tired of running. My battery backups lasted about 30 minutes. So I'd wait here for 5 to 10 minutes, and if there was no power restoration, I'd run home real quick, yank out the generator, crank it up, plug it all in. I got tired of that. You can imagine that. So I ended up buying an in-home generator, a whole home. Oh, I absolutely love it. It's great. Except, yeah, I do have to replace the battery on it every couple of years, but still, it's nice. Okay. Says creating preventive and recovery procedures. That's the one where a lot of people mess up on, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that section. And also testing them. I was, some of you might know the story, but I was part of the red carpet team when I was in the military at Tinker. It's one of those things you have to join committees, kind of like here at Rose, you have to join committees. And so one was called the red carpet team. They never met, ever. No one had ever remembered that meeting. So naturally, I picked that committee because I wouldn't have to do anything. Well, one day they activated us. And it was really kind of cool. They gave us this piece of paper, told us exactly what to do. What the red carpet team was to prepare and get a network up and running for a small organization, maybe if someone needed it. So my job, I had a little paper signed by the commander. I just had to go into someone's office. I think I had to steal their printer. Basically, we had to go through different organizations and take specific pieces of hardware, everybody on the committee, then we all had to meet up at the chapel and assemble it all. And it actually worked really well. Because everybody took the pieces that were needed, and we were able to set it all up. We had a fully functioning network with just taking little pieces from different places. And it was kind of cool, but we actually tested it, and it actually worked. So I was kind of amazed that it actually worked. Okay, so they talk about business recovery planning, crisis management, and disaster recovery. No one ever wants to talk about disaster recovery, but that is a big deal. We cover all three of these here. Okay. So let's talk about the impact analysis. It says, identifies business functionality and quantifies the impact a loss to these functions may have on business operations. Does Rose State have an impact analysis? I don't know. They do have a portion on which you're going to look at, but do they have everything? Probably not. It talks about assets and monetary funding. Okay. Rose State has no insurance on their vehicles. The only reason I know this is because I actually drive them. And one time I was authorized to get a rental car at a conference, and it was funny. They told me buy all insurance available. And it was funny. I went to the Hertz counter and literally bought all of it. It cost like 3 times the cost of the car. But the reason is Rose State is what's called self-insured. So if there's an accident, Rose State will just pay for it. They do not have to have secondary insurance. Since we're a state agency, it makes sense. But so is there enough money available for that? I know we have funding here, but say this building it wipes out. Does Rose State have enough money to rebuild this building? I don't know that answer. Okay. Physical protection. How about status? I mean, your reputation they talk about there, and your well-being. A lot of stuff to think about. We had to have this building appraised for this grant, so Now, what would it cost to replace it? I don't know. Okay. The the bottom here talks about the mission essential function. So, we actually now, I mean, some of you are involved in those drills we've been having. We had a tornado drill, we had an active shooter drill. What else did we have? Do you remember any? Yeah, a couple Tuesdays ago, literally right in the middle of class, we had an active shooter drill. Yeah. So we had to leave class, we had to go hide out in the cyber lounge, and they were going around the building, knocking on doors, trying to get in. They were upstairs saying, pizza delivery, see if somebody would let them in the room. But the point is we were actually now doing something, to train for it, which makes sense. Well, we need to do the same thing for IT. Does IT ever, here, let me show you something here. I'm going to show you this. It's not a video, but just so you don't think I'm lying to you. Chaos. Okay, there's something called the Chaos Monkey. See, it's right there. You can actually buy the Chaos Monkey. Okay, what the Chaos Monkey is, it's probably talking about one of these things here. But it's a way of testing. Well, yeah, it's in there. But it started by Amazon, since Netflix is hosted on Amazon. What it is if someone calls it a problem with Netflix, how are they going to troubleshoot it? So they have now what's called the Chaos Monkey, which randomly turns off pieces of network equipment to detect and see if the system can recover. Kind of a cool concept. So, yeah, but I'm not lying. It's really a thing. It's called the Chaos Monkey. You can buy that. So they're actually testing the redundancy. Okay? All right. It says, helps identification of the critical system. So at Rose State here, we have student enrollment, we have advisement, we have payroll, and I'm assuming other things. What do you think one of the most important things we need to have is? Anybody? Okay, if you have to think between student enrollment, payroll, finances, what do you think? Payroll. Probably payroll. Because I know at one point, at least, we had something in place for that. Can you imagine if Rose State was not able to pay us? How long would we be working here? Not long, depending. So, okay. So it helps you identify what's critical, what's mission essential. Like, could we live without electricity? Yeah, but not for too long. Okay. Our freezer would thaw out. That would suck. Then it would melt everywhere. Okay. Identify a single point of failure. We're going to talk about this later in the chapter. But is there a single point of failure anywhere in your system? Okay. We also talk about privacy, which we can talk more about that. Actually, we're not going to talk much more about that. But privacy is a big deal as well. I got an email, not an email, an actual letter in the mail from some company. Can't think of their name. But they said that my personal information has been released to the public through some breach. I don't even know what this company is. So that they give me a thing, what they're trying to do to fix it, and how they're going to be scrubbing the social media for personal information. I'm glad they told me about it, but it is a privacy impact if you think about it, okay? And let's move on. Disaster recovery plan, okay? So let's focus on protecting and restoring information technology. We're going to look at an example of that here in a minute. It says, written document detailing process of restoring IT resources. Does everybody have one of those? Probably not, okay? It should be comprehensive. It must have, have a common set of features. A lot of them have all this stuff. We're going to look at an example here. Here's what they normally have in them. The purpose, the scope, the recovery team, the preparing for a disaster, emergency procedure, and restoration procedure. So those 5 things is what should be in there, okay? Now they talk about, order of restoration. It says what should be done if it makes the current location, no longer available. Lots of different things, testing. They also mention tabletop exercises. We don't have that in any of our classes anymore that I know of. But tabletop is where you kind of walk through the entire thing. You walk through the entire process to simulate an emergency situation. I think somebody had them here on campus just recently. I don't know if it was the fire department or somebody. They actually had a tabletop here at Rose State. then you should generate some report about how it all went, okay? And here's the thing, people that should be involved in your disaster recovery plan, okay? Training and familiarizing roles, procedures, and responsibilities is what it should be all about. Now, let's look at this one. This is the one I want you to see. So based on those things you just learned that should be in them, this happens to be Rose State's disaster recovery plan. If I can get it to open. Oh, there it is. Okay. There. Get out of here. Okay, this is our disaster recovery plan. Okay, I literally got this off this place today. Does anyone see a problem right off the bat?
Fiscal year 2015.
Fiscal year 2015. Can anyone guess why it's dated fiscal year 2015?
That hasn't been updated since.
Correct. Well, let me give you a little bit of a background on this plan. We were applying for a Center of Academic Excellence. So I asked, because I had to supply our disaster recovery plan. So I went over to our people in charge and I'm like, hey, I need to see a disaster recovery plan. They're like, well, we don't have one in writing. I'm like, you need one. Well, we know what it is. It's in our head. I'm like, no, we need one in writing. So I was talking to the guy in charge. I'm like, well, what happens if you die today? Well, the next guy in charge knows. What happens if you both die? Well, the next guy in charge knows it. So basically nothing was in writing. So I kind of pressed the issue and now we have something in writing. So, if you think about the size of organization, we're not huge. But, so we start here, we have a scope. And then basically, we have the procedures to activate the backup data center. And then the context, that's it. It's missing a lot of information. I mean, this guy here doesn't even work here anymore. He left 2 or 3 years ago. Okay? So, do you feel like this is a good backup and recovery, disaster recovery plan? Not really. It is better than nothing, I will tell you that. And the problem is, by having just this, a lot of people think that's acceptable. And actually, for our certification, it was acceptable. I just think it's not enough. First of all, it's 5 years old. Now, the bad thing is next year we got to reapply. So I'm going to have to tell them, hey, we might want to update all these plans. So, because, I don't mean to, beat up on Rose State, but it's probably all organizations. When I ran my own business, did I have a disaster recovery plan? No. But I did have, battery backups in place. But again, I was the only employee. So not the best idea. So let's talk about fault tolerance. So to continue to function in case of a failure. That what it says, refer to the system's ability to deal with malfunctions when you use some sort of redundancy. I was at a technology show, years ago at TICRA. We're talking mid to late 90s. So think of the technology back then. It was a demonstration put on by Microsoft for clustering. I don't know what clustering is, put stuff together. Well, basically what they ended up having was they had 2 servers that were fault tolerant. In other words, they were redundant. Whatever's on one was on the other. And literally right there in front of the demo, we had the 2 servers going. And he said, oh, I had a power failure. Turn off one of them. And literally all the services that were running on one were picked up by the other one. There was a slight delay, but everything came up. So then, he went and made some changes on it. I think he had a web page up or something. Made some changes on it and saved it all. Then he powered the other one back up again, gave it a few minutes to synchronize. Then he's like, well, we had a power failure on the other one. So he turned off the other one. And the other one picked up everything. So it was very cool on how quickly it was able to recover from a failure. And there was no loss of anything. So very, very cool. Okay. Here says the solution to fault tolerance is redundancy. You want multiple things. Okay. Says they talk about mean time to recover. How long is it going to take you to recover from a failure? That could vary, but hopefully the shorter the better. Okay. It's like, nowadays we use the internet for so many things. You ever been to a website that says temporarily down? Oh man, this drives you crazy. It's like, what the heck? Can you imagine if Amazon was temporarily down? I mean, me alone buy at least a couple things a week from Amazon. I'm assuming a lot of people do. They lose a lot of business. Okay? It says applies to servers and storage and networks and power and sites and backup and data. We're going to talk about some of those. Now, servers, we all know what a server is. Okay? Here they mention clustering, combines two or more devices to appear as a single unit. That way, if one fails. Okay? Says this is multiple servers that appears as a single server, kind of like I just talked about. They have symmetric and asymmetric. And in other words, is one a slave, or so they basically work together. Okay. And an asymmetric cluster is a standby server, performs no function except when it's really needed, maybe for databases. And synchronous, they both do everything at all times. And synchronous is if one fails, the remaining server takes over the failed server's work. That's kind of what we saw at. Exactly. Failover automatically picks up where it was left off. My son works at a Chapel Supply. They sell pressure washers and everything. He had the hardest time setting up their backup network because they have a connection to the outside world, but they also needed a backup. And he had the hardest time getting the failover to work. But that can be an issue. You can only have one gateway, so they finally got it up and running. Here's a picture of a server cluster. So you have two servers. You have a shared medium, probably a SAN of some type. So one goes down, the other one picks up immediately. So you don't even realize it happens. So kind of a cool thing. Now storage. Okay, they talk about SSDs, solid state drives. They don't fail as bad, but they still could fail. And they talk about hard drives. Everybody realized the exception of SSDs, hard drives do spin. A lot of people don't realize that there's actually moving parts in there. Okay. Okay, now look at the next bullet, the mean time between failures. I tried to find a video, I couldn't find it earlier today. There was a video I was watching one day about testing my keyboard. They literally have a robot that keeps pushing keys, just pushes it until they fail. And everything will fail at one point or another. And the mean time to failure is the average time. Everything you buy has a mean time to failure. And I got a chart in here. I found this. They're talking about these different drive models and the failure rate of drives. So if I was to buy a hard drive today, would I buy this one down here at the bottom, this ST4000DM000? No, it has the highest failure rate. How about this one down here, this WDC whatever? That has a 0% failure rate. Now, I don't know if yeah.
In comparison to all the other ones.
Right. But, you're right. Some of these have a lot of failures. So we might have just had the 45 drives that actually worked well. But the point is, everything's going to fail at one point or another. People just, you just don't know when. Okay? It's like I get a leaky faucet at home. Faucets fail too. So I got to go fix that this weekend. Everything fails. Computers fail. Your car's going to break down. You're going to have a flat tire. You're going to run out of gas. So, a lot of stuff's going to happen. And, it's just kind of interesting on the failure rates of drives. All right. RAID. They call it redundant array of independent drives. And some people say it's inexpensive drives, but it's really independent or either way. It's using multiple drives as one, pretty much. Okay. They talk about RAID level 0, which is no redundancy. It's really just striping. What you're doing is you're writing across most or all of them. So when you write data, you write across multiple drives. So what does RAID 0 give us? Anyone know? If it doesn't give us redundancy, what does it give us?
More storage capacity and speed.
Storage capacity and speed, mainly speed, because now we can actually write to all, in this example, 4 drives at the same time.
Pretty much twice as fast.
Yeah, pretty much twice as fast. It says stripe partitions hard drives into smaller sections. Data is written to the stripes and across the alternate drives. If one fails, all the data is lost on that drive. Okay. Now, RAID level 1, mirroring. That's where you take your data and copy it. So whatever's on one is on the other. So how much drive are we losing with mirroring? Half. We're losing half because, if you got one drive, you have to have an exact mirror. So this mirror used to connect multiple drives to the same controller. Everything on the primary is also copied on the secondary. So if one drive fails, you don't lose everything. but you still have a single point of failure. Hence, they come up with duplexing. Now we actually have multiple controller points. Okay. All right, RAID 5. Well, it was the most popular for the longest time. It basically writes it with parity. In this example, they would be writing parity on one drive and data on the other 4. You can see it on there. Like the first time across, they wrote data on the first 4, parity on the last one. Next time, they wrote parity on the one before it, and so on and so forth. Okay. All right, so data stored on one drive, and there's parity information stored on another. Okay. 0 plus 1, it's nested RAID. It's basically RAID that's mirrored, or striped, I guess, mirrored RAID with segments of RAID 0 drives can achieve. So it's mirrored with striping. So a little bit better. And here are some or basically the definition of each one. Okay. RAID 5 is probably the one you would go with as the answer to pretty much anything, unless they ask, you know, where it is where you lose 50% and stuff like that. Now, I put a note in here. Anyone ever use Drobo? Okay, let me show you what Drobo is. Okay. Okay, Drobo is probably one of the highest rated storage solutions out there. Okay. I owned one. I owned the 5N, which is not here, but this is going to be somewhere close to it. Might actually look identical to that. And it's a network attached storage. I had 5 or 6 drives in there. I can't remember at this point exactly how many drives in there. And they use something called Beyond RAID, which is some special algorithm for them to make it even work better than RAID. And the reason I got it is, I had the 6 drives. And the theory behind RAID is if you have a single failure, you don't lose your data. Well, I had a failure, a single failure. Lost all my data. And what it was is I contacted Drobo. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they says, oh, they knew what drive failed. They could tell. It says, yes, but I had to get a different drive because of some weird, whatever. There was something written on this other drive. So what I ended up doing was I had to replace the failed drive. Plus, I had to duplicate one of the other drives that had some, basically, I was never able to get my data back. And I was quite pissed off because it didn't work. I don't know what, I still don't, to this day, know what it is. They told me I had to make a bitstream copy of a disk that had some volume information on it, plus replace the other disk. So it's like, why would I? The whole point of it is if one fails, you replace that one. But it didn't work. And to this day, I've never got it working again. Luckily, I have data in multiple locations. Anyways, I really didn't lose. All I lost was some pictures. So I was not a fan of that, and I will never buy another one in my life. So just my input on the matter. Okay, redundant networks. This is maybe useful due to critical nature of connectivity. What happens if your network fails at home? Does anyone freak out? Yeah, everybody freaks out at home. Can you imagine last night if HBO Go went down? You know what happened last night, don't you? Game of Thrones. Yeah. So, did anyone watch it but me?
I do.
You watch it, Alec? Did anyone watch Game of Thrones?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm watching it tonight.
Want to know what happens?
Yes.
No.
I won't tell you. But I mean, can you imagine people freaking out if stuff like that happens? Okay. So your redundant networks waits in the background during normal operations, uses a replication scheme to keep it up and running. So basically, it's a duplicate network that's not needed. That's what my son working on their network had a hard time setting up, getting to switch over with failure. The controller just did not want to do it correctly. Okay. That's what he has, a second internet provider as a backup. Normally not as powerful and as fast, but normally does not need it for all that long. Okay. Software-defined networks. This is software-defined controllers can increase the reliability and have redundant equipment there. Okay, and that you can kind of think of that like VMware network type stuff. Okay. Here they're talking about UPSs, battery backups. I love battery backups, but you know the batteries fail. Don't realize that. Yeah, they get old, and even my generator at home, we had a power issue, I don't know, 2 months ago, and my generator wouldn't come on. I'm like, are you kidding me? What it was, my battery died again. Well, my battery literally sits outside all year, and it's in an enclosure, but still it's in the weather. And this is probably, I've had the generator 15 years, and I think this is my second or third battery. So that's not bad. But how often do you go out there and check it? You don't until it doesn't work. Then it's like, darn it, we have no power. So I ran to the store, bought another battery, and then it worked fine. But, it just sucks. Now, they start talking about, offline and online. Okay, offline is, I have a battery backup in my office here. It's charging the battery, but I'm still running off of AC power. When there's a power failure, it switches over to the battery. But what's the problem with that? There's a slight delay. Normally doesn't cause issues, but it could. So there is a slight delay switching. Now my generator at home, the way that one does it is, when there's a power failure in my house, it waits 10 seconds. And if there's no power within 10 seconds, the generator kicks on, and that takes about 24 seconds. So I'm usually without power for about 34 seconds, is what I've timed it. Is that acceptable? Yeah, that's fine, but it depends. What if I'm running, the surgery lab at a hospital? That probably would not be an acceptable number. So really depends what you're doing. So offline, least expensive, simplest. It charges by main power, and you run on main power until either there's a failure, then it switches over. Online UPSs. I know you guys probably never seen it, but we took a tour of this at one time. They have an entire room of batteries. They're literally running off of the batteries. They're charging the batteries via AC power and running off of the batteries at all times. That way, if they lose power, they're still running off the batteries. And at that point, their diesel generators kick on to continually charging the batteries. So it says always running off the battery, not affected by dips or sags in power, and works much better. Also functions as a surge protector, but it's much more expensive. I mean, much, much more expensive. It says a UPS can also communicate with your network and can also turn stuff off. In the one in my office, I don't think I have to set up that way, but I could have it turn my computer off, when it's starting to run out of power, stuff like that. Okay. Backup generator, that's what I have. I have a natural gas one. It's wonderful. And what I always like to do whenever we're running on generator at home, the rest of the neighborhood's out, I make sure I turn on all the outside lights. That way everybody knows I'm on generator, they don't have power. And I do. So I was be me. Yes. Well, I have a neighbor next door. We were out for 6 days a couple years ago. We had a huge ice storm. I told him, dude, you can just plug into my generator. Now, when we were out for 6 days, my gas bill was $400. But if you think about it, I didn't have to go to a hotel. I had power. I didn't lose any food. Nothing spoiled. Nothing went rotten.
You didn't have to pay for power those days.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't have to pay for electricity. So, it's a good thing to have. All right. I put this picture in here. These are the newer things out there, like Tesla Powerwall. I will be getting one of those soon. I will be. Because I have a solar system. See, my problem is in the winter time, and actually right now, I'm producing more power than I'm using. So OG&E takes it from me. And at the end of the month, if I have an excess, they just zero out my bill, which pisses me off. So with a Powerwall, I will be able to store my excess and run. But the problem is I'll need 2 of those because I got a pool. I have a mother-in-law who loves to leave shit on. I have an on-demand water heater. I'm going to have one of those. Oh, love it. Because I really hate, how your water heaters are always heating the water? What happens if you go on vacation for a week? Keeps water hot. Why? You're not there. And even, there's always that pile of light that's burning. So I got an on-demand water heater. Cost me, I think it was about $175. Oh my God, I love it. It heats my water when I need. But there's a drawback to it. First of all, it can make the water nearly boiling. It's super hot if you leave it on full hot. But it will produce hot water until it runs out of electricity. So we came home, oh, this is a couple months ago. I walk into the house, and my entire house has this like fog in it. My mother-in-law had to get up, she went in, took a shower, climbed out of the shower, went and took a nap. And left the bathroom door open, and it was just water, hot water for hours and hours.
Didn't turn the shower off.
No, she didn't turn the shower off. It was like, ah, it's killing me. She'll leave faucets on, she'll leave showers on.
Condensation damage in the electronics in your house.
No, thank God. It wasn't that bad yet. But it was just, I mean, so it's a good thing and a bad thing. But I will tell you, I absolutely love it because in the past, you know, if we ran out of water, you had to let the water heat back up. Now you just get hot water forever. So very nice. All right, let's talk about recovery sites. I will tell you, I've seen this on many certification exams. I've seen it on Security Plus, I've seen it on CISSP, I've seen it on a bunch of them. So it's kind of important you know what these are. Backup sites may be necessary if floods, hurricanes, or whatever reason. Okay, it's kind of like a redundant location. The hot, cold, and warm. And there's actually a new one they call. I can't remember the new one is. Can't think what they call it. It probably is. It was some other. It's like combination in the middle thing. Okay, hot sites is generally run by commercial data recovery place. It's a duplicate of reproduction. You have everything. So if you got 5 servers at your normal location, you have 5 servers at your backup location. All the equipment's there. You can literally walk in there and run today. What do you think about cost?
Very expensive.
Very expensive. And you know your data could be synchronized, or you could very easily bring your data over there. So it's kind of like Rose State having a spare campus. Probably not the best option. Okay. Now speaking of that, now what do you think would be a good option for Rose State for backup purposes?
Back up the whole campus.
Yeah, I mean, what if, you know, I think would be a good idea would be to make an arrangement with OKCCC. That, hey, if we have a failure, we have a, you know, memorandum of understanding that we're going to go and use their buildings. So I'm assuming they have some spare room somewhere. Then we could get the same agreement for them to come use ours. Because, you know, we both do the same mission, pretty much. So I think that would be a good plan, okay? Be cheaper than a hot site for sure. Okay, cold site. Maybe we got office space. We don't have the computers, but we have the space available. No backups immediately available. So the customer must provide and install all equipment. So it's a building pretty much. I have a building rented that I can go in and use, but it's going to take me a couple of days to set it up and get it up and running. Okay, but it's something. It's better than nothing.
So just an empty room,
Basically, yes. Yeah. Warm site. All the equipment's in there. Probably doesn't have the internet turned on. Maybe doesn't even have electricity turned on. But you can get it on there somewhat quicker. It's less expensive than a hot, but it's better than the cold. Okay. So at least, you know, you can call and get the power turned on real quick, get the internet turned on, restore backup. So it's kind of, you know, between the two. Okay. So if a disaster occurs, restore it to the backup in a hot, or a warm site, whichever one. Again, there's a fourth name. It might have been lukewarm. I can't remember what it was. I was like, what? Okay. Data backup. Okay. If you don't have backup service, you need to get it. First of all, we all have Google Drive. It's part of Rose State, and you get it for life for free. It's called Backup and Sync. It comes free with your Google Drive. If you're not using it, you need to use it. Okay. So data backup, copying information to a different medium or stored in an off-site location. I use Carbonite, which I pay for, and I'll probably stop paying for it next year, just because I have Google available. Okay. Backup involves, this is data backup, use different types of data backups, off-site backups. So I was talking to Roy about this. So we all have Google Photos, you all use Google Photos, backs up all your photos for life, no space limitations on anything.
Android's the Android ones, that's all we use.
The Android ones? Well, that's Google, yeah. Well, so which is safer? Storing your pictures on a flash drive or storing on Google? What do you think? Google, obviously, because the problem with the flash drive is it's going to fail. Your flash drive will positively fail. The device will fail. It's kind of like floppy drives. couple of years back, I found an old box of floppy drives. Every single one of them was dead. They just no longer function. The magnetics in the floppy just died. What Google does is whenever you write, a picture up to Google Drive, it copies it to Google Drive, obviously. Well, you're not paying for it. So where do you think Google stores it? Do they store it on their super high, powerful, immediately available medium? No, they store it on the free stuff. But they keep moving it around. So your data is constantly in flux on Google. So what does that mean? It means your pictures are always being moved from one location to another. And before, what they do is they copy it, verify it, and then remove the old one. So your data is continuously being copied, rewritten, re-verified all the time. Unlike that flash drive in your drawer where you wrote files to it, and you haven't touched it for 10 years, and it might be dead by now. So Google is, we actually found an article about it. All your data is constantly in flux. It's always moving on Google, and it's always verified. So, which means your data is always verified to be intact. Good.
So it's usually like the expiration date for like files on flash drive or something to check when you're in 10 years, 5 years.
I don't know, but I got flash drives that I find old and they're just dead.
Yeah, probably it's kind of a
It's like
case basis.
it's like CDRWs. You can write to the rewritable CD-ROMs. They say those are only good for 100 reads or writes because they stop functioning after that. So if you got a bunch of stuff on those, they're gonna fail.
Yeah, like the chart with the hard drives.
Yeah.
There's probably a similar chart for.
Yeah. And Google buys the absolute cheapest equipment, but they do, their fault tolerance system is so good that everything's copied everywhere. So, all right, let's talk a little bit more about backups. Okay. I added some comments in here. They talk about two elements. They talk about the recovery point objective. And I added the second bullet on each. The recovery point objective is the age of files that must be recovered from backup storage for minimal operations to resume if a computer system or network goes down as a result of a failure. Okay. So, okay, I'm going to give you a prime example of this. Before my son took over, I took care of Chapel Supply. I had full backups once a month. Then I had incremental backups every day, and I think I had differential on weekends, which talk more about those. But they actually had a failure. I'm like, not a problem. We have backups, and they're actually stored in a different location. So we got the backups, and they do a lot with accounting. If you know anything about accounting, it opens up about 400 files at a time. Well, it turns out all my differential and incremental backups were fine. My full backup was not fine. So I was never able to get every single file they needed restored. It sucked. But the good thing was they used a piece of software called Sage. Okay. They were talking about, they even bought Mass 90, the newer replacement for it, the newer, better software. They bought it. They just were waiting to implement it. So when they had a failure in Sage, guess what? What better time to implement than now? So they implemented the new software. And it's not that we lost everything. It's just that we couldn't recover everything because our full backups were never good. So at what point, how old are your files? I store certain things here on the Rose State network because I know they're backed up. And in theory, hopefully they are. And did you know Google Drive? Okay, when you delete a file, is it really gone? Google Drive.
No, you gotta remove it from your thing.
Okay, it goes to trash.
Yeah.
What happens when you delete it from trash? It warns you, doesn't it? Well, let me tell you the Ken Dewey saga. I was moving stuff from my personal Google Drive. I had too much stuff there, so I was storing all my school files on my personal stuff. I moved it to my Rose State one. Made sure they were all there. Then I deleted them all from my personal. Still good, I can still read everything. Then I dumped the trash on my personal. Guess what happened? They're all gone. I lost everything. Well, let me explain why. It's not that I lost everything. I lost all Google Docs. I lost the Google Sheets, the Google spreadsheets, and stuff like that. What Google does is when you create a new Google Sheet, or a spreadsheet basically. The Google Sheet itself is stored as an object, and you have a link to it. So when I copied my personal to row state, it really just copied the link.
And the file is still the same.
The file was still the same.
So when you delete
But when I deleted it from my personal, it then deleted the file, but I had a link to the file that no longer exists. So you're like, what do you do at that point?
So would you get like redirected to like a blank page? Or something?
Yes, it literally would not load. Every spreadsheet, I was freaking out. I had a lot of stuff on there. So I said, okay, so I deleted it and I dumped the trash. And we're talking a day or two later at this point. Did you know Google can restore files for up to 26 days? But you contact Google, you literally go on their online chat, and it's free. They'll do it for free. You ask them how many days ago to restore. The problem is you can't selectively restore stuff. So you get everything that was restored on that day. And since I deleted everything on one day, guess what they had to do? Restore everything. And it gets worse. So they start restoring. Well, I see some of my files. So the ones I don't need, I start deleting those again. Well, it literally took over 24 hours to restore everything. And in the meantime, I'm deleting stuff, but I was deleting folders. And since the folders were gone, I no longer knew where to put all the files. So I ended up with, how many files did I have? I don't know. I had close to 100 gigs, all in the root directory. So I had to go, it was the craziest thing ever. But I finally got all my stuff back. What I ended up doing was, really the only thing that was affected was the Google Docs. I finally, what you have to do is, the way you do it is a little bit weird. But I had to change the ownership of the document from my personal to row state, and that changes the link to the object, and that fixed that. But once I got all those, then I just deleted everything all over again. But the point is, even though I had a backup and a backup and a back, I had an issue. But I was able to get it, so it's 26 days. But even when Terry Byers left here at Row State, as soon as he left, they immediately deleted his entire Google Drive account. And all the stuff in the Fab Lab was stored in the Google Drive. All the documentation for his courses, all the documentation for all the equipment was stored in there. So I asked the question, and I'm like, why do we delete faculty Google Drives? Well, by law, we must keep student Google Drives. It's a FERPA thing. We have to keep access to it for you guys. But we don't have to for faculty. But I'm like, but why don't we? Because we don't have to. I'm like, but it doesn't cost anything. So instead of the step of delete Terry Byers Google Drive, just don't do that step. So that got approved. And it's done. We keep them, literally it was free to the school. It does not cost us a penny, so why would you delete it? They're like, because we do. I'm like, why? So, I don't know. It's crazy. But okay. So the age of file is a big issue there. Okay. Now, recovery time objective is the targeted duration of time and a service level within the business process must be restored. In other words, if you had a failure, how long is acceptable to be back up and running? So if we had a failure now, we lost power at Row State. Yeah, not a big deal. We just go home early today. But what if we still didn't have power tomorrow? Can we live with it one day? Yeah, we could probably live with it. But we were out for 6 days during that ice storm. We still functioned, but there comes a point in time where it's too much. So, okay. So how long before it must be restored? Okay. Types of backup. Let's talk about these. Full backup, you back up everything. Now, the critical part here is look over at the archive bit. Okay. Whenever a file is modified in any way, the archive bit, I think there's a way I can see this. What does it show all the bits? That's not it. Show arc display file with there's /a. I want to see the attributes. I can't remember how to do it. Sound separator file, you locate. Does no one know how to show the archive bit? Someone has to know. Short name generated, the 4-digit year. Can't remember. There's tree. So we know A is for archiving. Let's do it with, didn't I do the -A? So all those have been changed, but there is a way to show the darn archive bit. I can't remember what it is, but come on, it's got to be here. Display files with specific SLUs, bare format, display 1000 separator. I can't believe no one knows this. Someone had to see it, but besides me. I just can't remember. Yeah, we're going to find out. Okay, since no one's telling me, we're going to find out. Let's see, Windows. The attrib. Oh, it's the attribute command. That's what it is. There we go. There it is. Okay, so this file, ntuser.dat, is archive system and is hidden. Okay? And this bottom one is archive system hidden and read only. So it's a trib, not dir. Okay. So what the archive bit means is that file was modified since it was last backed up. Okay? So when we do a full backup, it gets rid of the archive bit. That way, every file has been backed up. Differential, it sets it to 1. Okay? And differential is everything since the last full backup. Okay? So you see, full backup is everything. Differential is everything since the last full backup. Incremental says backed up any data that has changed since the last full backup or last incremental backup. So it's clear and it's set to 0. So it's, you know, what I would normally do is like try to do full backup once a month, differential once a week, and incremental every other day. That's where you get everything. So just different levels of backups. And here's an example. We're not going to go through that. Okay. Says there's a more comprehensive backup technology known continuous data protection where it backs up immediately and restore it immediately. I've never messed with that. Kind of creates a snapshot of everything. So if you know what VMware is, that snapshot's built in. Okay. Your backup plan, 3, 2, 1, you should have multiple different things. 3 different copies of data, and at least 2 different types of storage, and should not be stored at the same place. Back when I worked in software development at Tinker, whenever we came up with a new release, we had to make 2 copies electronically and 2 copies on paper. One was stored internally, you know, well, not with us, but stored in another building. The other one was stored offsite. So it's always a good idea. Okay, let's see what else in here. This is a lot of internet providers. I used to use one called Core Vault. They've changed their name 5 times. Now there's something else. Let's see who they are now. I had to tour that place. It was kind of cool. Core Vault, what are they known by now? The Halliburton system. No, that's not it. That's not the one. Core Vault backup. It changed. I know their new name. See, there's the article from 2007. Best ways to back up. I don't know who they're. Dobson Technologies launched a new Core Vault. This is in 2013. I don't know. But it was, they're up by Northwest Expressway, and it was really a good place for using backups. But I use a Carbonite now, which is $54 a year for unlimited backup, which is nice. So it's not bad at all. Okay. All right. Legal implications. I can't speak tonight. Hard time speaking tonight. It says the primary issue involved data. Okay, spell that. Sovereignty. Who owns it? Okay. So, you know, who owns it? And yeah, we're having an issue with that here at school, believe it or not. Okay, to identify a cloud service provider whose data center location ensure that it fully complies with all the different laws. Okay, the law of the country, except, yeah. So, all right. Some of fire suppression. I've seen that on the CISSP exam. Do you have fire suppression? Do you have EMI? Okay, what's the movie with EMI and electromagnetic interference? Okay, yeah. Before that, Ocean's 11, whatever. Didn't they have an EMI in there? I think they did. Yep. Okay. Fire suppression. Can you put out a fire? Okay. What type do you have? Now here we have water sprinklers in our building. Is that good? Not good for computers. That's for darn sure. Okay. All right. And y'all know what a fire is. They have us a picture here on this next one. Fire needs oxygen, heat, and fuel. So if you take off one, it goes away. Okay. When I worked in Europe in the military, we had a halon fire suppression, whatever system put out a fire. And halon, the problem with halon is it displaces oxygen, so people are dying. Yes, very poisonous stuff. So it's no longer used anywhere that I know of. Okay. AMI, electromagnetic interference.
It's also an ozone.
Oh, yes, it is, yes. But is the ozone truly being depleted?
Is there even an ozone?
Exactly. There might not even be one. It's like the ice cap is actually growing again.
The world is round.
The world is flat.
Yeah, you're right.
You know that. Yes, exactly. Okay, so electromagnetic interference. When I worked in the military, we had to make special connections on the AWACS planes so that an EMI would not cause a failure. We had to have a special, the way like the generators were connected to the plane had to be done a special way so it wouldn't take those out. Yeah, kind of crazy stuff. Okay, electromagnetic capabilities is reducing or eliminating the unintentional generator spread and reception of electromagnetic energy. It used to be, I don't think they do it anymore, cell phones used to make speakers go off. Don't anyone remember that? The old cell phones would make the speakers, if you had them near it, your speaker would yeah, I don't think they do it anymore. Okay. You can also have a Faraday cage, which is basically a metal box to put stuff in. Okay. All right. What was the name of the movie that had a Faraday cage in it? Come on, no, you guys don't watch movies? Enemy of the State with Gene Hackman. Oh, man, you guys are out there. This is a Faraday cage. It's a metallic box, basically, you can put stuff in, and it blocks electrical signals. Okay? So, watch this. I bet it's going to say Enemy of the State. Let's go back and see the names. Yeah, that's a picture of it. Faraday cage. There's a special movie about that? No, it's called Enemy of the State. I don't care what they say. That's your homework for today. Go watch Enemy of the State. It's a really good one. Okay, so Faraday. I was in Louisville, Kentucky, at the forensics laboratory there, and what they had made was a Faraday cage out of a bag. It was made of metallic stuff, basically. And what they did for cell phones was they would take the cell phones, put it in the bag with their hand, tie it up around their hand, and then they could manipulate the phone without worrying about, someone remotely turning it off or wiping the data or anything. So kind of a cool thing. Here's a picture of a Faraday cage. The signal can't get there. I tell you, our faculty lounge over here, the metallic coating on that window is craziness. You can't get signals through it. Even the majority of this building, there's so much metal in these walls that not much stuff gets through there.
Block like every signal in Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, everything.
Blocks everything. Yep, blocks everything.
Just like
Not infrared, that's for sure. I know.
I was going to ask that too.
Yeah, not
like
infrared.
the rating on your micro.
Exactly.
Okay.
Same thing. So that's why I went on I was in Orlando this weekend. Now I put some stuff in a safe. I'm assuming the safe, since it's solid metal, would be a Faraday cage, don't you think? Should be.
Solid metal, usually not. It's like the net patterns.
Oh, I need to put a phone in the safe and see if I can call it. I'm going to try that. Okay. Yep. Cooling requirements. Air conditioning is kind of important. I'll tell you, when I ran my ISB, it was in the back of my house back in my yard in a shed. No heating in there, but I had air conditioning. And what I would do is it had a window bucket, basically, that was controlled by a thermostat. In other words, when it got too hot, the air would turn off, cool it down, then turn off again. And I had a remote thermostat, so I could literally watch the temperature go up. And I knew the air conditioner turned on, the temperature would drop and go back up because I couldn't afford to run it all the time. Okay, so this is more cooling necessary due to large numbers of systems. Was it Facebook was going to build a data center up in Greenland? Is that right? One of them. They were going to build a data center. Greenland's the cold one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Iceland's the green one. Okay. But I think they were going to build one there. And I know Microsoft was looking to put a data center underwater because you could keep it cool that way. So it'd be kind of hard to go out and change the parts, but okay. But heating, ventilation, all that stuff is important for our systems. Have to keep them cool. And they talk about hot aisle, cold aisle. When we toured Dell, they had that where all the exhaust from the systems point toward each other. So that's the hot aisle. And the other side's the cold aisle, so they cool every other area. It's kind of a cool. So servers lined up in alternating rows with cold air intake facing one direction and hot air exhaust out the other. Okay. Okay. And instant response. This is when unauthorized instance occurs, you need to have a response for it. Makes sense. Okay. Using forensics or using whatever. Okay. I'm not going to go deep into forensics because there's an entire course on this. There's a lot. This is applying science to legal questions is what forensics is. Also recovering data and stuff like that. They talk about in the second bullet. Okay. Some things to think about is the amount of computer forensics data out there. When I was up in Tulsa, there was a guy talking from the Tulsa Cybercrimes Lab. And when they first started investigating cyber crimes, what do you think they confiscated? They would confiscate everything because they didn't know. So they would literally take the tower, the keyboard, the mouse, the monitor, and everything. Nowadays, they would really, they normally would take the tower. But the point is, if you're unsure, take everything. Okay? And the more crimes you have, the more stuff you have to store. Okay? So the incident response plan says written instructions, the preparation, the identification, the containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned from whatever is going on. Okay. Should contain the incident definitions, the cybercrime response teams, reporting requirements, and then exercises. Here's the basics of the forensics. Secure the crime scene. We don't do a crime scene in that class, but keep people out, lock the doors, whatever. Preserve the evidence. So what do you do? Like this computer right now is turned on. So if a crime happened, you're a cop. What would you do to this machine? Would you just unplug it? No. Well, first of all, you take a picture of what's on the screen. And if you have the capability, capture the memory. But then would you shut it down gracefully or unplug it? What do you think? Just pull the plug. Because when you shut a machine down, what does it do to the page file? It clears it. So unplugging it, it could potentially leave something in the page file. Okay. Then you talk about chain of custody. So if I need to get this computer from here to California, how can I get it there? With maintaining a chain of custody. In other words, I can track it the whole way. FedEx, totally legit. FedEx is a legal chain of custody. Yep. Because they can literally track it everywhere it goes. Okay. All right, secure the crime scene. We already talked enough of that. I'm not cover that in detail. Physical photograph everything. That's a big deal. You ever work on something in your house? Like I work on electrical stuff all the time. I always take a picture of it so I can always put it back together again. Yeah, same with an engine. Same with pretty much everything. The computer, does it really matter which port you plug a certain USB cable into? No, but I would say yes. Especially when you're looking through the registry, what device is plugged into what hub. So it couldn't matter if it was in the front or the back. So photograph, label everything. Okay. Preserve your evidence. We're almost out of time. Okay. Okay, let's see what else. Let's move on. Here it is. The sequence to be retrieved. cache, memory, peripheral type stuff first. Okay, your registers, that's the quickest stuff to be deleted. Then your RAM, then your network, then your running processes. That's the order you retrieve that stuff. Okay. Images, you need to image the device. We use FTK or MCase. There's a lot, or DD. There's lots of tools out there to image the device. You can do a mirror image, which is an exact copy, or a bitstream copy. That's what DD does. That's probably the most popular. Okay. Chain of custody, it's documentation showing where the evidence has been under control the entire time. Talked about that already. You can use images, you can search through them, you can search through emails, you can search through spreadsheets, you can recover files, lots of stuff. And if you take the forensics course, you'll see a lot more about that. And the last section there they talk about is the hidden spaces. And I don't know if these pictures are very good, but they kind of get the idea across. In this top picture, we wrote a letter to Susan and saved it somewhere, okay? Well, the RAM slack is, okay, in this case, sector 3 there is whatever was prior in that section, in that sector in memory. So in this case, whatever that was, including the password of yellow, was written in memory, okay? Stuff's written in memory just like it's written to a drive. And just because you close something doesn't mean the memory is overwritten, it's just no longer needed. And this is a better example, even though the example still sucks. Here we have a deleted file at the top. This is the data in the file. We deleted it. So it's flagged with an E5 sigma character, which basically tells the OS I no longer need it. Well, when you overwrite it, in this case, exempt, down here they wrote the memo, it did not overwrite the entire file. So a portion of the file is there, and you learn a whole bunch more about sectors and stuff like that in the forensics class. There could be stuff left over in there. In the data recovery class, you actually get a exercise where I wrote stuff, then overwrote it, and you can recover part of the old data that was not overwritten. In this case, we can see a portion of the file, even though it's not written that way. It gives you an example of what it looks like. Okay. Recovery, it says the collection, processing, analysis, and dissemination of intelligence for forming policy changes. Okay, logging, log everything so you can recover it. NTFS, New Technology File System, that's an excellent logging system in it. So if your files get recovered, you can recover them. One of my clients had a corrupt system. I forget exactly what the server was, but it basically said the files were corrupt. I ran check this /F, and it used the transaction log in the NTFS system to rebuild. We got all their data back, and I didn't lose a single thing. So if you ever have corrupt data, first thing you do is run check this /F, and then as long as you have NTFS, that a lot of times can fix it. Okay, and that's the end of this chapter. Okay, before everybody leaves, let me stop the recording. Stop the